Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Miss. So today we're doing retrospective on the Sega Model 1, Model 2, and Model 3 games that aren't racing games because I did that retrospective last year. And today, if you can't already tell, we're taking a look at Spikeout, which is an absolutely over-the-top, wild 3D beat-em-up that kind of feels like Streets of Rage without the actual franchise involved. This is one of those mindless fun video games where you just push forward, beat the ever-loving hell out of anyone in your path, and just keep moving forward. And if you bring a friend, it becomes even that much more fun of a game. And this was a big franchise for Sega for a while. You had Spikeout, Spikeout Final Battle, and Slash Out on the Sega Naomi, but we're taking a look at Final Battle today, which is the more definitive version of Spikeout on the Sega Model 3. Before you get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But when I say Spikeout is just one of those classic 3D beat 'em ups, I mean it. This in a lot of ways feels like the evolution of something like Die Hard Arcade on the Saturn and Sega Titan Video, but without any of those franchises involved. This is just a fast-paced romp through the world of Sega and how they see a 3D beat 'em up going. I just always love playing this game. Now do be aware though, for an arcade game, this thing is incredibly long and it's going to be like an hour and 15 to an hour and 25 minutes from start to finish to actually see the credits scroll on this one. And that is because this was intended to come to the Sega Dreamcast back in the day. Magazines announced it as being ported home and it never actually happened, but an hour and change arcade game is not the norm whatsoever. It's usually 30 to 45 minutes on a beat 'em up and then you watch the credits. This one's always felt longer, but I will say right off the top, the best part about Spikeout is gotta be the combat engine. It is fast, it is fluid, there's so many different moves, charge attacks, and supers that you can do, including contextual attacks with those supers if you're holding an enemy. There's so much variation in the combat, but once you pick it up and learn it, it's so fluid. You're going to be pivoting from bad guy to bad guy, jumping, body slamming them, knocking them into the air to immobilize them while you attack another enemy. Once you get your flow going in this game, it's got a feeling that I don't think any other 3D beat 'em up ever really brought to this space, because as much as I've loved Die Hard Arcade, this just has a sense of fluidity and motion that I love. And you marry that with the absolute outstanding graphics of the Sega Model 3, and then to the Supermodel emulator upping the internal resolution and giving you proper 16:9 widescreen, and you just have a game that looks by all respects relatively modern. This could be an early gen PlayStation 3 game and I would 100% believe it. And I do love all the ephemeral storytelling as well in the actual game. This helicopter flies in, you have all these seagulls flying around, and the bad guys just drop down from the helicopter waiting to get the crap beaten out of them. And you'll see here pretty much every stage has multiple bosses. They're not the most unique until you get towards the end of the game, but if you destroy the boss, you're going to not have to kill all the other scrub enemies. And at the beginning of the game, they don't load you up with too many opponents at once, but once you get past the first level, you're going to start fighting 10-12 guys at a time, and screen space management becomes an absolute essential. You need to basically deal with them all at once. This game's always felt like it was designed to have the best flow with 2 players, but you can totally bring 1 player in as well. And I just love the game's sense of humor as well. Spike here has a little dude on his back who can jump off and basically pretend to attack alongside of you. It's never explained why this is happening, and you don't really need to worry about it. You just get to be amused. And every single level has its own unique vibe and flair. We started down at the piers, now we're in this warehouse district where all of these big rigs are gassing up, and we'll very shortly go into the warehouses and down to the piers as well. You get taken through an entire path on Spikeout, and it makes sense in context of what very little story there is. I didn't even bother worrying about putting the story in the edit because honestly, it's like an arcade game. Do you really need story? No. You just know that you need to beat the ever-loving hell out of everyone. And of course it is a Sega beat 'em up, so there's going to be 2 things in this game. The first, a scantily clad woman that's going to fight you, and the second I'll show you at the end of the video. But I even love battling on the stairs here. It makes it more challenging, but it pivots up the gameplay that you're not always on a level surface. It takes a minute to get used to, but once you do, you absolutely fall in love with it. And of course it's a Sega game, so you know it has an epic soundtrack as well. Go ahead and listen for 45 seconds and I'll be right back. Now that might not be the best music Sega's ever made for an arcade game, but it is perfect for Spikeout. It's fast, it's fluid, and it really drives home the impact of your punches. You just get a sense of intensity from the overall speed of the soundtrack that it drives you forward. It makes you just want to punch more fools directly in front of you. You'll see there I just used a special attack, but you do want to save those up, not only for the bosses, but when you have a bunch of enemies around you at once, they can absolutely gang up on you. They can start to stun lock you, trap you in corners, and sometimes you can feel like you lose a life with a little bit of an unfair situation. And you do have charge attacks as well, which I generally don't use that much in the game. It takes just enough time to charge them up that inevitably you're going to get punched directly in the face while you're charging it, and it's going to end up being to no benefit of you, but you can totally play the game however you want. Now you will see here I do get trapped in a corner and I need to fight my way out, and you can get juggled. That's my one and only complaint about Spikeout, is sometimes you actually don't gain control of your character back. And every once in a while bosses also have invulnerability frames. When they are flashing like that right there, you cannot damage them. It kind of feels a little bit like a cheap quarter munching tactic, but because we're playing this on Supermodel, there's no quarters involved, so we can kind of forgive it of that. But as we get back into the sunlight again, just look at how incredible Sega Model 3 still looks to this day. Obviously we're playing with enhancements on Supermodel, but these are the type of games that just 100% hold up in my opinion. I've stated this before on the channel. If 3D never got any better than Sega Model 3 and they just started making more types of games on this hardware, I would have been totally fine with that. I just love the look, style, feel, and motion of Model 3 graphics, and when you marry them to an intense beat 'em up like Spikeout, you have a recipe for an awesome game. And I really do wish this had come out for Dreamcast, because the one thing I want to do in the game is be able to walk away after 30 minutes and come back for another play session. Because when I say this is one of the longest arcade beat-em-ups I've ever played, I think it takes the #1 spot as far as length is concerned. I think the next longest one would be around 45 minutes, but I checked my last playthrough of this game when I captured it, and it was an hour and 27 minutes long, with all of the credits and all of the cutscenes playing out on a long play. So this is definitely going to take your attention and time, but you're going to have so much fun with it. I'm going to give you one more taste of the soundtrack without combat this time, but I'll come back and tell you a little bit more about the game because I love it. I just love that piece of soundtrack, and I love when we go into first-person mode as well. It kind of feels like they're borrowing one of their light gun engine games, but I'm really not sure what engine this was made on. Now, the thing that it does remind me of in a good way, even though that series would come later, is Yakuza. These fights always felt like some of the earlier Yakuza games where they're just so over-the-top and animated. I'm not sure if you've ever seen a street fight in real life, but they do not happen like this whatsoever, although that would be entertaining if they did. But you will see here again, in close quarters combat, you do not want to get in the middle of a group of enemies, and you do not want to get your back pushed up against anything. That is a recipe to losing a life and having to put a new credit into the machine. And as the next boss comes out, when I talked about the context sensitive attacks, if you use a super while you're holding a character, you're going to spin him around and get an even bigger area of effect on that. You will rotate further and spin out, creating an even bigger wake of havoc in your reach. And of course, like I said earlier, all Sega beat-em-ups need two things: a scantily clad woman to fight and an elevator. And Spikeout has that elevator right here, although it's technically moving left to right, so I think it more might be like a people mover than an elevator, but you leave me a comment down below and tell me. But I just love Spikeout. It's a different era of games, back in the day when Sega was just making those huge arcade experiences. It is extremely light on story. It's all you're going to do is beat the crap out of people, but you're going to love every single second of it. And trust me, bring a friend for a playthrough, because it's not like they increase the enemies that often in the number count, and having a second person to deal with some of the enemies is going to make a fundamental difference, because again right here I'm just getting the crap juggled out of me, and that makes the game more difficult, but it always makes you want to come back and play more. That's what Spikeout does the best. Even when you're taking some cheap deaths, all of the spectacle, all of the fun, all of the Model 3 graphics and the fighting engine within Spikeout just make you want to hit continue and keep going going along through the game. Now, because it is an hour and 20 minutes long, the back quarter definitely feels like it drags a tiny bit, but otherwise, this is like a 9 out of 5 out of 10 in my opinion. But tell me down below, have you ever played Spikeout in arcades, and did you know about this game's existence? Because as far as Model 3 games are concerned, I feel like a decent amount of people know about Spikeout, but not everyone, so I would be curious. But short of that, I'll give it a 9.5 out of 10. Definitely check it out, but we are done. I'll be back next week with some more Sega, but take it easy, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.